Hi, I often get asked by folk why they are told to breathe with their belly by different movement specialists. And so I thought it'd be a really good idea to just drop on here and let you know a little bit about why that is and why it's not ideal for pelvic health. So this is a bit about organ placement and orientation, toddler versus adult, the anatomical structure of a toddler's pelvis, rib cage and organ placement is fundamentally different from that of an adult, which influences their breathing patterns. It also influences their pelvic orientation and spinal curvature. So in a toddler, the pelvis is more posteriorly tilted, a more neutral or even flexed position due to the undeveloped lumbar lordosis. The sacrum is less angulated, meaning the pelvic floor is positioned differently. Their spinal curves are less pronounced. Infants start with a C-shaped spine. They're all curved up like this and develop lordotic and kyphotic curves as they learn to stand and walk. So initially, their spines are not the way ours are. Their ribs are more horizontal, making rib cage expansion less pronounced in the early years, so the belly breathing is more apparent. In an adult, the pelvis is anteriorly tilted in most people, and this is due to the development of lumbar lordosis. The sacrum starts to angle downward, and the pelvic floor becomes more weight-bearing because we're going to be doing more standing, so it needs to become more weight-bearing. The ribs start to become more downward angled, which makes lateral costal expansion more functionally efficient than belly breathing. Let me sink that in, more functionally efficient than belly breathing. So organ placement and the abdominal cavity and pressure. In a toddler, their organs take up more space in the abdominal cavity relative to body size. The diaphragm sits much higher and it presses more onto the abdominal contents. The thoracic cavity, so this area here, is shorter and smaller in toddlers, with less available lung expansion. The pelvic floor is not yet required to be a major postural stabilizer because we're spending a lot of time crawling, allowing for more diaphragm-dominant belly breathing. So rather than thoracic diaphragm belly breathing, it's more dominant belly breathing. Okay, so in an adult, the abdominal cavity has more room for organ displacement. The diaphragm descends more freely and the rib cage mobility increases to allow a lateral expansion. So this is super important. Lateral expansion is really important. The pelvic floor is more involved in postural stability, meaning a breath that only expands the belly may not now provide optimal support for the core. So we need more. So how does this actually affect breathing patterns? So belly breathing is natural for babies and toddlers. Let's recap. The smaller rib cage and more horizontal ribs means less lateral expansion is available. The higher diaphragm and packed abdominal cavity makes belly movement is the easiest way for them to create intra-abdominal pressure shifts. They have more of a posterior pelvic orientation, which changes how pressure is distributed, making belly breathing much more natural for them. There's also minimal postural demand on the pelvic floor. So, for babies and toddlers, there's no need for integrated intra-abdominal pressure management. So, why belly breathing may not be favourable for adults? We have much more of an anterior pelvic tilt, and the downward rib angles change. So this requires more core and rib expansion, not just belly movement. Belly movement is part of it, but we need to have that lateral movement too. The pelvic floor is now involved in posture and pressure regulation. A belly-dominant breath can create pressure mismanagement or management problems, which means that the more developed ribcage mobility adults have access to, the more 360 expansion. So a belly-only breath is mechanically limiting. So we want more 360 expansion to make us manage pressure better. Our organ and diaphragm positioning shift. The diaphragm has more space to drop or lower without excessive abdominal distension. So, what is functional breathing as we age? Infants and toddlers, belly breathing is efficient because it aligns with their anatomy. Adults, 360 lateral costal breathing is more optimal because it supports our core stability and pelvic floor function. It reduces excess intra-abdominal pressure, which belly breathing may actually increase. It encourages ribcage mobility, maintaining our postural integrity and supporting our spine. In hyperpressors, this is why we use lateral costal expansion, and it's why it's emphasized in our programs. It aligns much better with adult biomechanics than belly breathing. So I hope this has helped, because so many of my clients come to me and say, you know, I've learned belly breathing and been told that belly breathing is diaphragmatic breathing. And yes, you are using your diaphragm. If you weren't using your diaphragm, then, you know, there would be issues going on. We'd have real upper chest breathing possibly. I mean, even then we do use our diaphragm a little bit. But the biggest takeaway from this is anatomically, the 360 breath, the lateral costal breathing, helps us to manage pressure, but it also does this amazing pre-timing or setting up of all the other kind of cascade of muscle functions for us to have a functional pelvic floor. But that's for another video. Take care. Bye.